If it just so happened that you were selling ice cream and you were selling kidney bean and broccoli flavored ice cream and nobody was buying it, well, I bet you changed the formula. I bet you would do something different. Now, YouTube really loves when I do reviews and they don't show a lot of my tutorials anymore. But you guys did show love in the last tutorial, so for that, I'm thankful, and I'm going to drop a bombshell on you guys today. We're going to go through everything about this haircut. The members are going to get this video in its entirety, and I might have to split this up so YouTube doesn't kill me. All right? The reason is, this is not a hobby for me. This is full time. This is what I do for money, and I have to do what works. So if you guys enjoy the content, please do me a favor, drop a comment, hit the thumbs up, and support our sponsors, bookedin.com/Eddie for my appointment scheduling app, and also Fort Worth Barber Supply. Use the code Eddie10 and save 10% off of your order. And obviously, you know, Stylecraft code Eddie, save money. Okay, with all that out of the way, today we actually have a top-down view with my keyboard in it, and we're going to be breaking down certain aspects of this haircut. Also, we have our mannequin here, which is going to help me to explain certain things, and we're going to walk through a haircut, and I'm going to try my best because I know some of you guys got the brain of a goldfish when it comes to your attention span, so I'm going to try my best to keep this thing moving along. We're going to start with my guy Connor right here, and we're going to start by removing bulk off the sides with a number 3 and a nice flicking up motion. Now, one thing I want to caution you guys about, haircutting is not perfection. That's just for the birds on Instagram. Real haircutting, real barbering, down in the trenches where it actually matters, where you're building clientele, you're doing the best job you can despite crazy growth patterns and whatever the hair presents you. So we are going to do the best we can with every single person. So don't let that negative person get in your ear. It's all positivity over here. My clients love me. I know that they're going to love the haircut that I give them, and we're going to have some fun as we step through this process. So some of you guys who felt like you may have lost your confidence or you're listening to the wrong people, listen to me when I tell you this, man. It's not about perfection. It's not about Instagram. We have a beautiful job here, one that will never be replaced by AI. And all of you guys that are doing other jobs right now, a lot of you guys aren't safe, but this one is. You got to trust me. So we're going to break down certain aspects of this fade. And the one thing I hear all the time is, Ed, I'm really starting to understand the rest of your process, but I'm really struggling getting that skin line out. So we're going to do a bird's eye view here. I'm going to zoom in deep, and we're going to really make sure that you understand this and you got a system that you can hold on to. But I also want to tell you one thing about systems. Screw all the systems, screw all the steps, screw everything you ever heard before this video. Because today we're going to be guided by one thing, and that's going to be our eyes. Our eyes are going to give the haircut what it needs. So let's go ahead and let's step through the process. The first couple of things that you see me doing is I'm just trying to build a little bit of a passable connection into the top. No, this doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to use that number 3 like I did, flick up and out. And as you see me going through little by little, I'm just shaping it up with some clipper over comb. But now comes the point in time where you can set yourself up for misery, or you can set yourself up for success. Now, with this particular haircut on this particular guy, his hair is very difficult to remove the skin line. And there's a lot of people like him. So I would like to just take a second. Let's stop this. And I'm going to explain one thing right off the bat. We're going to soft set this guideline. The very first thing I want to do is show you guys. I'm just using this clipper as an example. It actually has a taper blade on it. This is the Gamma Ergo. Really easy clipper to blend with if you've never used one. We got this clipper fully closed. If you're using something with a fade blade or a vapor blade or an Echo Crunch blade or whatever blade you're using, really, when we first set this guideline in, I like to close it all the way. That's pushing the lever all the way up and then click it back just one click. That's going to be a super soft guideline to remove. When we're setting this guideline in, I'm also kind of flicking up and out, and I'm just doing everything I can to soften this guideline. This is what's called setting yourself up for success, and it's going to make the rest of your process much easier. Now, something I get all the time, a question I get all the time is, hey, what's a high fade? What's a low fade? What's a mid fade? And to all of that, I would say I really don't care. I don't think any of that's very important. I think that it really just boils down to between what you and your client have decided. But if you really need some type of a guide to go by, let's face this mannequin this way. A high fade would be anything that was on or above the parietal ridge. If I put a comb on the side of the head, right where it leaves the hair, that's the parietal ridge. If you put your skin line all the way up here, it's going to be a pretty high fade. Anything between the parietal ridge and the ear, let's say somewhere in the middle, to me, that would be a mid fade. And anything low, I think low fades are retarded, to be honest. They last like 2 days. But if you must do the low fade, because a lot of people do like the low fade, and it's a nice look, don't get me wrong. It just, to me, it isn't worth wearing. So a low fade could be a million different things. It's kind of a very subjective thing, but essentially to me, that would mean just barely above the ear. You might drop it in the back, you might not. Why do people drop their fades in the back? I'll tell you why. The reason is I'm always looking for the occipital bone. I don't want to put my guideline on an area that might give me trouble. So in Connor's case, his occipital bone really isn't all that bad, but some people have a really bad protruding occipital bone. So you generally want to put that line in either above it or below it far enough where it's not going to cause you any issues. Now, there are tons of skinny people in this world, and when you deal with certain people that have head shapes that kind of concave in, there's not a ton that you can do about that. Sometimes that's just going to happen. And that's exactly why I say the hell with the process, because all the rules, they really start to go out the window when you start to struggle. So I want you to be guided by the best barber tool you have, and that's actually your eyes. So as you see, once I'm done with this guideline, I definitely want to double check it in the mirror. I definitely want to make sure it's in good shape. And the next thing we want to do is we want to come underneath with our trimmer. So if we look at this guide that we have here, if I put a trimmer underneath, I'm actually not going to make a line. I'm going to be coming up close as I can get to this line, flicking up and out. I really like to do this with the trimmer held just the way I would hold the clipper and the handshake grip, and flick up and out. Your goal here should be no line between where you went with your trimmer and where you went with your open taper guideline. Actually, that's actually a closed taper. It's only one click open. I should have put one click open. Okay, so I don't know why I put open taper. We're gonna get to the open taper. We don't want to have any line between our trimmer and that one click open if we can avoid it. Now, the beauty of this whole thing is we're setting in a guideline that's going to be extremely easy to remove. With that being said, as we work our way through this process, you're going to see that it's going to be very easy for you guys to create a really good, solid foundation. Now, this entire area, what we're doing right now, this is phase one. I'm just going to put P1 at the top of my board, and this stands for phase one. And phase one is just the removal of bulk and getting everything down to skin and preparing to start removing our guideline. Phase two, we've kind of separated that into some clipper over comb, and that's what we got going on with clipper over comb. And then phase three is going to be cutting the top. So once we work our way through this, you'll see that this hairline is finally down. It's finally all the way down to 5 zeros. The next step, keeping things super easy, is going to be using our electric shaver underneath. Now, when we use this electric shaver underneath, we're going to be going up, trying to stop where we went with our trimmer. So as we go up and out, our goal right now is to make sure that between our trimmer and now our electric shaver, if we pretend this is our electric shaver, we're coming up right about where we left. We're flicking up and out. We also might tap down, kind of pepper it side to side. This is where the rules go out the window, and you do what you need to do to make sure that this does not create a line. Now, really, the nice thing about this entire process so far is we've made everything super easy. We have not put a harsh guideline in, and technically speaking, the clipper that we decided to put this first initial one-click open guideline in is going to be pretty easy to remove the guideline. I honestly think this is a really good strategy, especially if you're a beginner. I think it's a good strategy if you're an expert. I think it's a good strategy if you're working on a customer that you've never worked on before and you're not sure what it's going to do. So in this case, before I do any, because this hair has grown back so much, in this case, before I actually start my true blending process, I'm just going to take a number 2 and I'm going to flick up and out. Nothing real difficult about what I'm doing here. This is just flicking up and out and kind of giving me a little bit of a space to start working my actual steps in. So if we take this number 2 and we clean this section up a little bit, it's going to be much easier. Some of you guys got a little bit of a bad habit is you'll start trying to blend when the hair is super thick still. Like the client walked in, he's got a lot of regrowth and you really can't see what you're doing, and you're definitely not going to be able to flick that section very good. Now, I actually think for some of the newer barbers, one of the hardest things to do is to maintain pressure on the head while you're flicking. So my goal would be to kind of kind of keep it, let it ride up off of the section, and just kind of keep the pressure on the head. You actually don't actually have to leave the head unless the hair is super long. So for the most part, it's just kind of going back and forth. When you think about it, it's actually, the motion is actually a lot like using an eraser when you're trying to erase something that you wrote with a pencil. So it's just keeping the pressure on the head, removing that. Now, when I see this right here, I know that I'm really set up and I'm ready to go. Okay, so we're gonna actually begin removing this line and we're gonna actually start our blend. I always like to start behind the ear because I'd much rather make a mistake there than in the front of the hairline. Another reason for that is a lot of times their hair is super light. It could be a little thinner in the front and it might not react the way you think. That's why these processes, they really don't mean shit. You gotta make sure that you're letting your eyes kind of guide you on where to go. So what are we actually doing now? We actually have the clipper fully open. So we're going to take the lever, we're going to click it all the way down, and we have it open. That's going to allow the clipper to cut the longest that it can in this position with no guard on it. And again, with that pencil and eraser like stroke, we're trying to lift up. We're trying to soften that upper guideline. That's something I always do, but it is not critical. If you're brand new to this and you don't feel comfortable with flicking, you don't have to. All right, so for the next part of the process, we're actually gonna put our number 1 guard on. I want you guys to just ignore the skin line, ignore what's difficult. We've set a good guideline in and we're gonna actually set another guideline in, but this is actually a part where we're gonna start blending a little bit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our number 1 guard on and then we're gonna click this back 2 clicks, 1, 2. Now what that actually does is that opens the clipper about halfway, and that's a good move because a number 1 sometimes will create another line. And if we go all the way open, sometimes we won't get a good feel for what's actually happening in the step. However, that's the process and the rules go out the window the moment you start. That means that if you start and you're like, hey, I want to open this a little bit, or hey, I want to close this a little bit, you can feel free to do that. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to put that number 1 on there. And when we're setting in guidelines, we're generally going to keep the clipper pretty horizontal. But when we're starting to blend, we're actually going to start tipping it on a corner. So right now, this is kind of the first part of the process that we're actually beginning any type of real blending in. So you see that I'm actually just using a couple of teeth. I'm flicking up, I'm flicking out, and I'm just trying to see if I can build a passable connection into what I did with that number 2. And if I can, great. If I can't, I have other steps to do. And that's the beauty of not really sticking to a complete process. You can actually have a little bit of leeway, you can have a little bit of latitude, and you can work within that perimeter. So as you see, it's actually starting to soften those upper guidelines quite well. And the initial line that I put in is actually very faint. So it's going to be really easy to remove the guideline. So now I got this fully open and I'm going to continue working. I'm going to do it fully closed and I'm going to work it any way that I need to finish off this step. So as you kind of work your way through this process, you're going to see, okay, that's all the number 1 was able to do. I've got everything I can out of that. And now it's time for us to actually attack the skin line. I hope you guys are ready because here comes the key to actually getting your blend perfect. Our initial 1-click open guideline is actually pretty faint. And at the very top of this, I've got it zoomed in a little bit, but this is the open taper guideline right here. So now what I really like to do, make sure the clipper stays on an angle and make sure that we poke into it. The first thing we're going to do is close our clipper all the way now. And because we went 1-click open, this is actually going to work out pretty good. And we're going to chip into this line using only the corner, but we're going to try to stay pretty low. Our goal is to just kind of rock and roll right over top of our original line. We're going to rock and roll right over top of that. Now, we're going to actually start to open this up and we're going to continue the process. And we're going to keep doing this. Each click that we open it up, we're going to go up a little bit higher and we're going to go into this line. Right? There might not be a line. That's the beauty of starting this like this is a lot of times you might just knock this line out entirely right away. And we will continue doing this until we reach the actual open position, which is what we sort of started with when we set in that guideline. So as you guys can see, this blend is coming together quite easily. And it's all because I soft set that guideline. So if you guys find yourself really struggling on how to remove the skin line, this is the answer to all your problems. If you're putting your skin line in with a trimmer, especially if you got the trimmer like upside down, you can definitely do that. If you're an expert, if you're really good at this, you can definitely do that. But if you're not comfortable, if you're struggling, if you're dealing with a new customer, if you don't know what the hair might do, if it has certain challenges in it, definitely soft set the guideline. I would say I probably do this out of the day 9 times out of 10. When I put my skin line in, I really love to put it in like this on the majority of customers, unless I know for a fact I've worked with their hair and I know that it's not going to give me too much trouble. So using a clipper now also with a taper blade probably won't get it out. So now we want to go to either a fade blade, a vapor blade, or Echo Crunch blade. Depending on what you're using, you want to make sure that it is. I'm sure this question is going to come up. Hey, Ed, do you zero gap your clippers? Actually, I don't really care about that so much anymore. There was a time where I felt like that was absolutely necessary. But the more I cut hair, the more I've taught beginners, I start to realize that it's not really as necessary as you think it is. So here's where the rules start to go out the window at the end of the section. We might open it, we might close it again, and we're letting our eyes kind of dictate where it is we need to go and what it is we need to do. In his case, his hair is like almost black and his scalp is super, super white, which means it's going to show every single mistake we make. And it also means that removing the skin line is probably going to be the most difficult part because his hair is so dark, it'll mask any of the mistakes that I might make going up into the top section. And if we have some struggles here, if we have something that's not coming out, now we'll pick up our trimmer and we'll do the same thing, only using the corner, only chipping in, and really need to be mindful of where that guideline was. You might not be able to see it everywhere, but that's pretty much the strategy there. And if you guys can do this, you can pretty much do anything. I think it's pretty smart to walk before you run. There was probably a year or so that I mastered a number 2 on the back and sides, scissors on top, started experimenting with the tapers. I really didn't go into skin fades right away when I first started cutting hair. I started cutting hair in 2003, and I've done nothing but really teach along the way. And I started to realize that this is really the best way for most people to come up with a really good result quickly. So if you guys haven't tried this, hit the pause button. You guys can come back to this video, look at this video, try it, use a friend or a family member or something, and try to keep these keys in mind. Promise you, if you struggle, this is really going to help. So let's actually move into phase 3 of the haircut because, like I said, I'm not going to show you the entire haircut. There's no reason to. I'll skip this other side. We're going to do the exact same thing. Now, many clients are going to come in with some really thick hair, and this is a huge key that'll help speed you up. If you felt his hair is so thick, it's actually ridiculous. I haven't really dealt with too many people in the last 20 years of doing this that have hair quite as thick as him. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take our texturizing shears and we're going to texturize the living daylights out of this. And what we're actually doing is just removing a bunch of bulk. So you see me using my comb to kind of lead it. I'm chopping into it and I'm trying to remove as much of that bulk as I can because it's going to reduce the amount of work and hand fatigue I get when I use my scissors on top. And he actually requests this all the time. Like I said, it's just super, super thick and it'll leave them nice and texturized. So now let's actually teach you guys properly how to cut the top. A lot of guys who are out here teaching you guys this stuff are making it so complicated that to me, I don't really understand why it would need to be this complicated. I watched some of these tutorials. I've seen some of these guys. And the truth is, it doesn't need to be more complicated than this. This technique has got me through 20 years of doing this. I have had a constant full book. I own my own shop. Like, I don't really need to toot my accomplishments. The truth is, it doesn't need to be this complicated. I'm going to show you guys a quick system that's going to make this really easy. Right now, the very first thing you're ever going to see me do with every customer, no matter how long I've been cutting their hair, is you're going to see me make eye contact. I'm going to hold up exactly how much I want to take off, and I'm going to make sure that I get a confirmation from them. And once I do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut my first guideline. If we have this top-down view, you guys can see my mannequin right here. We're actually going to create a mohawk guideline, and we always want to take the bangs out of it for now. It's just good practice. In this case, it really doesn't matter because he wears his hair straight back. It really doesn't make a difference, but let's just do this for good practice. We'll remove the front of the hairline, and we're going to focus on this mohawk section going straight back. And it's going to look something like this. We have just the center of the hair. Never make a section that's wider than your comb. And we're going to make sure that we're directing this hair straight off the scalp. Now, if I direct this hair straight off the scalp, right? And then I pull it over here. Well, I'm over directing it, and that's going to cause an increase in length. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we take it straight up. Straight up means that your fingers are going to mimic the shape of the scalp. There are times where I want it to be a little more square, in which case I'll make my guideline a little more square. I won't go around the curve of the head. But this is actually a very small part of a 90-degree haircut. So once we have our mohawk section complete, we'll cut that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to pick up a section just beside it, and we're going to be able to see what we got going on here. So if for a second we pretended this was the top, here's our initial guideline. Here's the section beside it when we pick it up, and you can see it's a little longer, so we're just going to cut right there. Pretty soon, we're going to pick up this next section. It's going to be longer. We're going to cut right there. So what's going to happen here is we're making a stationary guideline, and it's going to get wider. Now we'll jump to the left side of the head, and we'll cut the left side of the head. You can choose to point cut if you want. If you don't feel comfortable point cutting, you don't have to. You can do a lot of the texturizing afterwards. So like I said, guys, don't complicate it. We're making our guideline wider and wider until it goes off the side of the head. And it really is just this simple. So don't let people tell you that you got to do something crazy to cut the top. Once we've got our guideline entirely shaped around the head the way we want, we're kind of looking at the mirror. We're paying attention to how it's laying, and we're making sure that we get our guideline done the best that we can. So we cut this standing directly behind him. This was his nose, right? We stood behind him the whole time. So we held our comb horizontally, and we cut back, and we made our section wider and wider, right? So the next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to cross-check vertically. So we're going to pick up some sections now this way, and we're going to make sure that we didn't make any mistakes. Don't worry if you did make some mistakes. That's normal. There's going to be something to cut in that cross-checking section, and it's going to all come out nice and easy. Now, I know you're probably thinking, Ed, what about the front? I understand what you're saying here. It makes a lot of sense. What do we do in the front of the hair? So now you see me cross-checking the hair. I'm looking for any mistakes. I'm doing everything I need to do to make sure that everything is clean. But what we're actually going to do here is cut the very front. So the first thing that I want to do is I actually want to comb the front of that hairline down. So even though he wears his hairline back, I want to comb it down, and I want to cut the zero guideline. I want it to be kind of flat on his, I don't care if he's got curls or if it makes it all messed up. The whole point of this is so that one day when he combs the hair down, there isn't anything that's super long, which there very well could be depending on grow back. So we're going to just comb it down, and we're going to do our best to make a straight line here. When we're happy with where that lays, now we're going to blend our interior guide to our exterior guide. So that's an exterior guideline. So now we're going to stand off to the side, and you're going to see I'm going to kind of tip my fingers until I got my back guideline, the stuff that I cut back here, and I got my very front guideline there. And if there's anything sticking out, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cut it. And I'm not going to recut the bangs. This is a mistake that I see all the time. And for whatever reason, whenever a lot of you guys do hard parts, you do this all the time where you wind up leaving it really weighty on the side that it combs over on. It makes no sense to leave it all wavy. Right there in that section, when you see what I just picked up, you can see how easy I'm able to see. There's my start, there's my end. So I want to find that perfect place. If you pick up a section and it almost looks too good to be true, make sure you comb it, make sure you're controlling it well, and you're not going to have a problem. You're going to wind up having confidence with the scissors, and little by little you practice this, you will learn this. This is probably the easiest part of the haircut. It's just so many people make it so complicated and convoluted that there really is no point to listening to them. So now what you're seeing is I'm actually over directing it on purpose to the front. I'm holding it up in a variety of different ways, and this is where all the process goes out the window. I'm looking for anything funny, anything that's not laying correctly, and I'm making sure that I do my best to make sure that it does. Now, this is actually considered phase 3 when we explain it. I have a lot of videos on my channel kind of breaking this down even further, but I really feel like that is a rock solid way for you guys to start cutting the top and actually start having some success. So next, we're actually going to move on to our phase 5. And phase 5 is the edge up, but also you see me doing a little bit of my detail work. Sometimes I'll leave the sides a little longer, and I'll come back and I'll use a little shear over comb to make sure that I dial that in. This is kind of a separate technique in of itself, But our goal here is to leave we want to make sure that the bottom of our shear stays still and we're only really moving our thumb. That's a general rule of thumb. It doesn't matter if you don't. I've been a chomper my whole life. I've still found a way to get it done. You'll find a style that works for you. And this is just like take a little bit off and look, take a little bit off and look. And having a taper comb, something that is very skinny, really will help you here. It will make it so much easier. So we can also use our texturizing shears. And this is where the beauty comes in. This is technically phase 6 where we're doing the final details. But this is where having all of these tools really helps. We use a little bit of a taper comb. And when you have curves in the scalp and difficult areas, this is what you want to try first before you pick your clippers back up, which of course we will in phase 6. You can also lay the texturizing shears literally right on the scalp and you can cut. You can do the same thing with your scissors. Now is also a great time to take your clipper over comb. If I face them towards the mirror and my fade is looking perfect, but it's kind of sticking out on one side versus the other, that's where using your mirror is really going to help. And that's why, learning some clipper over comb and some shear over comb, I think it's really, really important. And we can go in there and we can detail. All the rules are out the window now. You understand how all your guards work. You understand how everything, how you got to this point in the process. So pick up the guard that you think will do it. If it's clipper over comb, use it. If it's a number 2, use it. If you think it's a 1.5, use it. The only caution I would say is if you're not sure, go a little bit of a step above where you went in your previous step. So let's go ahead. Let's skip through some of this. And let's go to our edge up process. A lot of times when I'm filming, right, the camera's over here, so you'll see me holding it weird. I'm actually leaning in funny directions. Don't listen to these idiot know-nothing people from the comment section. They're like, oh my God, it's crooked. Oh my God. Some people don't want their hairline to be absolutely perfect. Some people don't want you to bite into I'm one of these people. I don't want you to push my hairline back so it's perfect for you, because in 2 days, it's not going to be perfect for me and you're going to look bad too. So my goal here is to take very little off the front. I really do like this pencil grip. Like I'm literally holding a pencil right now. I like using this pencil grip and it allows me to have 3 points of contact. 1 is on the top of the head. 2 is on the actual clipper on my palm, and then my trimmer touching. That's 3 points of contact. So if you have 3 points of contact, you're going to put a reasonably good line down the very first time. I will tell you guys a quick story. I had a barber working at my shop and he did an edge up that just, frankly, it wasn't complete. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't complete. And I went over there, I took the trimmers and I did it. And he was really surprised by how much time it took me to get it right. Like I kept finagling until I had it just perfect. And sometimes that's what you're going to need to do. You're not going to be able to get it perfect first go a lot of times. You need to use your mirror. You need to pay attention to what you're doing, and you will get it perfect. Now, in the case of this guy, some of you guys have seen me cut him live, literally cut him live. He has a funny spot on his forehead that is really, really sensitive, and it's really easy to cut. So before I use my straight razor, a lot of times I'll actually travel over it with my electric shaver, get it down to almost nothing. And then when I use the straight razor, I don't have any problems. I remember one time I made a video with him, did a great job on his edge up. I cut him on like the last stroke. I cut the camera and I said, listen, man, some guy broke in the shop and he ran up in here with a razor and he sliced him in the forehead and he ran out. That's all he did. Obviously not true. I'm just being funny, but yeah, these are things that happen. Like I said, when you're in the trenches, you're actually doing this for a living. I've been doing this a long time. Every once in a while, you're still going to cut people. So next move here, we're going to put a little bit of enhancements in. Now, he actually has a really good, strong hairline, but this just really sets it off. And I'll show you guys a little secret here. This is a big key. If you really want your haircuts to pop, you want to take really good photos, you want to really impress your clients, this is the best way to do it. I personally love painting it in with a brush most of the time, but there are times where using an airbrush makes a lot of sense. But I love using a brush like this. Get a little bit on the very corner of the edge. Keep your brush handy and brush it into the hair. Not only will this make your hairline look great, it'll also make your fade look great. And a lot of the stuff that you guys see, these photoshopped haircuts on Instagram, a lot of you guys have unrealistic expectations and you think that that's a good haircut. That's a good haircut. Like real work in the barbershop is almost impossible to make perfect. We do our best, and my clients love and ask for this all the time. And it allows me, if you look at the middle of his hairline, it's a little light right there. Could I have pushed the sides back to catch up to that? Absolutely, I could have. But he would rather me take some product, put it in there, and he's got about 3 days with this. This stuff lasts 3 days. You can wash, you can shower, you can do everything. And this is Kiss Express. I'll link it down below. Fort Worth Barber Supply sells it. And if you guys need any of this stuff, Fort Worth Barber Supply's got you covered. Code Eddie10, save you 10%. And they have really fast shipping. They're as fast as Amazon. They're super reliable, and they're a family-owned company. They're just great people. And that's why so many YouTubers and so many influencers work with them. It's really a cool thing that they support education to the degree that they do. My clients always do that, by the way. They always lean forward and check out their hairline. They're like, especially if I got somebody who's never came to me before, like I'm going to show you guys in one of my next videos. I got a guy who was brand new, never came to me before, and he was like, oh my God, bro, you killed it. Like, that's the reaction that I live for. I love it. Now, I got my little mister here, my little new nano mister. It's a studio mister, but I'm actually spraying aftershave on some Q-tips, and I'm going to clean up some of the areas of color that I may have painted that I didn't want to keep. If you do this right now, it'll actually come off pretty easy. And you take a little bit of aftershave, put it on a Q-tip, and clean up that area. Once you do, you're going to have a really good looking haircut at the end of the day. We'll go back through with the razor. We'll cut that all up. And then we're going to go through our little photo session, make sure we get some photos, and bring you guys in close for that up close and personal look. And I don't know if I have it in there, but we have a Rogue here. For whatever reason, these magnetic motors that are in the Ergo or the Rogue, this is something I always gravitate to towards the end of the haircut. If I had to take one clipper only, like if that was it, I probably would still maybe pick up an Ergo if it came to fading. Now, if I'm removing bulk, yeah, they're maybe not as good for that. But for polishing and finishing off the end of your haircut, there's just something about that you just can't seem to beat. I absolutely love this haircut. I think it came out great, and I was really happy. So was the client. So with that being said, this obviously was a ton of work to make. So if you guys could do me a favor, hit the thumbs up. YouTube, like I said, really doesn't reward me too much for doing tutorials like this. I love to get deep like this. I love to get into the nitty gritty. I love to actually do teaching that makes a difference. And hopefully this does make a difference. So if there was something that I said in here that you guys enjoyed, do me a favor, man. Just drop me a comment down below. Let me know. And if you guys need anything, of course, mess with my sponsors. Really appreciate that. We do have over 1,000 videos to help you learn. So subscribe if you're not already. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace. I'm out.